Shift Happens podcast.
Welcome to the Shift Happens podcast, where we explore the latest trends and technologies transforming the future of work. In this episode, Chandima Kulathilake, Account Technology Strategist for Microsoft Australia and New Zealand, shares his insights on the findings and implications of the Work Trends Index reports on AI usage and perception in the region. He'll explain the benefits, challenges, and how everyone can embrace AI to create value, reduce friction, and enhance their skills and careers. Hey everybody, welcome back to another Shift Happens episode. We're so excited here today to have a wonderful colleague, friend, industry partner on the other side of the world, Chan. So Chan, why don't you say hi, introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, thanks, Dax, and great to be here. So I'm Chan or Chandima. I work at Microsoft in New Zealand, and I look after the what we call our education industry business, and looking after exclusively Microsoft New Zealand customers, the universities and all the education side of our business. Yeah, so excited to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Of course. And before we get going with our conversation, one of the things we have in this podcast is we ask our guests as to what song resonates with you most as you think about disruption, change, and transformation and all this shift that's happening.
Yeah. So I think for me, I'm a massive David Bowie fan. Changes by Bowie kind of resonates with me. And there's this line in it which says, "Turn and face the strange," which is about the disruption that happens and also embracing it. So that's kind of the song that I identify with for this particular podcast, I would say.
You know, that's an amazing line, right? Because it really suggests how you confront and embrace the unfamiliar. And talk about embracing the unfamiliar. I mean, look, we're now inundated with AI in the workplace, AI in our personal lives. And Microsoft, in fact, recently released a really cool updated report, the Work Trends Index. And this is one of the things, Mari and I want to get deep into you with is around zooming into New Zealand and perhaps Australia as well, around the adoption, or more important, the perception of this change that's happening. So maybe big picture, can you provide some context and view into what the Work Trend Index report talks about specific to Australia and New Zealand?
Yeah, Dax, I guess, we started this Work Trend Index report some time ago as part of what we do across our ecosystem of users, I suppose, who are using 365 as a platform and specific use cases around how they're adapting or adopting their work styles, etc. So, over the last few years, obviously, in November 2022, the big change in our technology landscape happened with ChatGPT launch. And if you're following the technology trends, you would have been aware of the many iterations of AI before that, which led to obviously OpenAI releasing ChatGPT into the domain, and within 3 months, 100 million users, etc., etc. There's a lot of curiosity and also interest in GenAI. So the report, I guess, highlights how from that time and over the last couple of years, how people have started using the capabilities. So we obviously launched Copilot in Microsoft 365, which is kind of like our implementation of our AI capabilities within our experiences. So the report talks about all those aspects and how people are seeing that. I think I would, with any, as both you and I know, Dax, the change of tech adoption is not without its challenges, right? And it is kind of multi-dimensional, if you will, and from the people side to the process side and the technology side. And I think AI adds a few more challenges to the mix, and things like data management, accuracy, veracity of data, cybersecurity, and how ethically and how transparent the data transparency is, etc. while I think we're seeing, according to the report, we're seeing some good stats around how people are using it, where they're using it, and what leaders are seeing from a trend point of view. I think the trends are high in certain pockets, but I think it's not same across the board, and there's ways to go about it. And it really depends on things like, digital skilling, maturity, and availability of that quality data set that people can actually trust.
That's interesting, Chan. Actually, speaking of skilling, I think the report also showed that about 3/4 of leaders in Australia and New Zealand believe that they should be or looking to hire someone that definitely has AI skills. And so I'm curious as to, when we think about AI skills now, where do you see the competencies required, especially in public sector organizations in the region?
Yeah, great question, Mario. I mean, the thing, I guess on general, right? On top of the experience that skill someone brings to a specific role in public sector, I think what we're seeing is that people are now starting to acquire the use of AI skills, right? How to use ChatGPT, how to use better prompt techniques, things like that. I think from what we are hearing, as far as we know, what leaders are looking for is how can those AI experiences be used to reduce the friction between meaningful work and things that are very task driven, process driven. How can those be automated so that people have more time to focus on high value tasks, right? And that we are seeing around how do you, as a more of a technical BA type role, how do you use that to put more time towards bringing that value conversation to what you do in the public sector?
Yeah, that's super interesting. And when we think about the change in skills, we also can't forget about the fact that a lot of habits are formed because of technology. And so when suddenly you're no longer going to drag and drop and sort of click around an interface, but instead think about prompt based experiences, on the one hand, you need to be more creative, right? To be better almost at delegating so that you can have more effective and efficient prompts. I'm also interested in I believe that the report also talked about 70% respondents said that they worry about the organization's leadership, especially as it's thinking about what's the implementation of AI. And so I'm curious as to what strategies you think are working, how leaders are effectively thinking about this. I know recently Gartner put out a talk track around digital workplace leaders and how it's really important for digital workplace leaders to develop champions within the network that can promote, desire for actually interfacing with new experiences. And so I'm just curious as to what you're seeing in that regard.
Yeah, Mario, I think I guess the leaders acknowledge that the difficulty or the challenges they're having is identifying those use cases for AI, and then obviously matching the right people to then go and explore those use cases where AI would create value, right? And despite this, I guess, sort of uncertainty, it's clear that as a leader, you want to create that environment for your people to start experimenting, right? So if you think about an AI, I guess a AI strategy, if you will, kind of creating from a viewpoint of your organization, what your unique value propositions are, to creating working groups around how do you use AI or how do you adapt AI, and then kind of going through that, understanding, okay, do we have a existing digital strategies or existing things that we can now see whether AI actually fits into the picture, right? I think that to be clear on the outcomes that you want and being very specific about what you go after is probably important. But at the same time, you shouldn't limit yourself, because this, like you said, it changes the game, because we are so used to clicking here and there, whereas now you can be more interactive, or you can actually speak, and it's almost like the interface on how we interact with systems is going to change. So therefore, understanding that shift and what that would mean downstream, because you're not building something for today, you're building something for longer term. So it's hard to, I don't think anyone in the industry can say this is what's going to happen tomorrow, because we are moving at a very rapid rate, right? We even how we look at things today, by tomorrow things are going to change. But acknowledging that, but learning about it, I think is really, really important from a leadership point of view. And sometimes I feel that people kind of go and say, we need to have a strategy, but it could be simple as we have to use AI, we'll figure it out, and that's your strategy, right? And getting started itself is a strategy.
Chen, I'm curious, as you're describing all this, and you work with a lot of customers across the board. I know primarily you look after education, public sector, but I'm sure here and there you get to talk to customers in private companies as well, even large and small, right? Can you think of recent conversations you had or examples of who's really leading and forward thinking with respect to adopting AI in their organization?
Yeah, Dax, look, I get to chat to a lot of people. And recently we had this event in Wellington. I facilitated a panel. And one of the panelists was is JD, who has actually created, he owns a business, this is his business, and they build software. And what he's saying is that it's actually democratizing traditionally software engineers, followed a certain pattern, they understood code, etc., etc. However, having access to AI LLM models and capabilities like Copilot in GitHub, etc., is actually democratizing that work. So where they are seeing value is that they can actually address more customers in a meaningful way, where they could not have previously done it. Service point of view, right? There's a huge thing around how well you service your customers, right? In any business situation, things like being able to service your customers quicker, things like providing cost reduction, how you serve your customers are things that are constant, right? As a business, you evolve and you kind of create that value. So I think those are the areas where AI can actually add more value. How do I, as a business, provide better service to my customers, whether it's public or private, doesn't matter, because no one wants to pay more for something. And you got to think about how could you do that in a way that's meaningful for your business and your customers, and evolve your business as well. Business is a constant thing. Public service is the same as well.
I mean, expanding that further, right? So we're seeing customers around the world embracing Copilot for 365, for example, because especially leadership, they see the value. A lot of customers we talk to, because they tend to be larger, they're in the pilot phase, testing it out, making sure the data quality and data security is in the right place. But then for those that have already deployed, they've already seen the benefits, just simple things, right? Like meeting notes and being able to highlight what you should prioritize for the day. Are you seeing the same thing with respect to adoption at pretty much the end user level for Copilot in New Zealand and Australia, for that matter?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're doing some great work with some of the public sector agencies, so actually helping them understand what that actually means from them. For me personally, I'm gonna put a personal lens to what I'm going to tell you. It's been a sort of game changer, because I could start my week and kind of go in a single prompt. I can understand what my week is going to look like, and then I can get a summary of the meetings that I can't be at. Those things, a few months ago we couldn't do, but now you can, which that allows me to is that I'm really on point of what I need to focus on and what I don't need to focus on, right? I know what I need to know in a very much quicker way. So those will compound over time. I think the key thing to understand here is that making sure that people that are given those capabilities understand the framework in which you operate in. And as a leader, kind of leading the people. As a leader, you are supposed to lead people and actually showcasing what are others doing, creating these cohesive work groups. Hey, look, I used this to solve this problem, and this was the outcome, right? And encouraging that, or what I call creating those conditions for people to thrive and be empowered, that they know that they're being actually supported, right? And that again is a really key thing. One thing I would call out is that there's a LinkedIn talent report that came alongside the Work Trend Index report, right? In that report, it highlights learning and development priorities for 2024 and beyond. And one of the things that is top priority for leaders is helping employees develop their careers, which has risen to number 4. Previously, it was number 9. And AI plays a significant role in that, because the reason that is risen to 9 is because respondents have said, like, I want my leaders to help me learn about AI, right? So that puts a whole different dimension to it as well, right? So it becomes more of a, how do I retain talent to a better way of being productive, being happy at work, et cetera, et cetera. Those kind of things are, I think, are going to be quite top of mind for leaders right now, not in the future, right now, because we are in this changing, ever-evolving landscape, right?
It's very interesting. And I was going to ask you prior to that, you making that statement, what were going to be some of the opportunities? You just mentioned a few. What about challenges? Where do you feel the challenges are still, either are they cultural? Are they also, obviously lack of leadership would be a challenge, but I'm just curious, or is it implementation? Like, what phase do you think we're in presently?
Yeah, I think, look, Mario, you've raised a good point, right? We see this because everyone's kind of very opportunistic. We see that we see the opportunity, and obviously the challenge that if I have a really good some conversation that I have with my CIOs and CISO groups that I engage with, is what they're trying to I guess fundamentally understand is that they understand the opportunity. The challenges they see is their current platforms that they have, right? So there's the challenges around availability of skilled people who can help them realize these opportunities. I think we mentioned about the skilling part of it. And where do they invest their time in, right? And where can they have most impact when it comes to the investment they want to make? Then things like foundational aspects, like what most people kind of call out as getting our house in order. Things like fundamental data accuracy problems, existing frameworks, or how comfortable are they, so they can say, we know how we manage our data estate, we know how we manage security risk profile, we know how to then use that to our advantage. So those are kind of the challenges that people are mentioning, especially CIOs and CISOs. There's a level of emphasis on ensuring that the people that are looking after these platforms understand the risks and the implications of that as well, right? And all in all, I think a lot of people are very pragmatic about it. They've got a short-term view of where they want to do things, and then they have a kind of a mid-term view of where they want to go. But of course, the challenge is things are changing at a really fast rate. So the way in which they implement, or the way in which they think about it, has to somewhat change, and that's where the kind of some of the friction lies as well. And then, of course, as we know, there's challenges in terms of available budgets, available skills, available capacity, and not overwhelming them of trying to do too much, and then kind of stepping by in a way that makes sense for their organization.
It makes a lot of sense. Well, one thing we haven't touched on, I'm just curious if you can share a few perspectives. What about the regulatory environment that you're seeing in both, whether it's New Zealand or Australia?
Yeah, I think Australia has done quite a bit of work around the regulatory side of things, and we're seeing that being talked about in frameworks for public sector on the responsible and ethical use of AI, right? So we are seeing a lot of that happening at that cabinet ministerial type level. In in New Zealand, I know that we've gone through a bit of challenges through changing government, etc. But it's a priority for public sector to kind of understand where they need to make changes or where do they need to influence those changes to come in. So all in all, most agencies have a working paper or a draft or a directive to say that agencies will do these things, and here's the framework. It's use of responsible AI, making sure that the things that they do align with their mission, values, etc., etc. So there are third-party bodies that help kind of orchestrate that or help understand or bringing in the specialists that you need in those domains. People who understand the policy frameworks that are existing and what changes do you need to influence or implement for those things. So we are seeing that happening across the board. It's not as fast as someone would expect it to be, but it is government, right? So those things will happen, and we are seeing that across in Europe. We've seen that across in the US, and I think it's a matter of kind of having those right conditions put in place. And I think the conditions are. It's not like no one said don't use this, and people are making conscious decisions about how and when and how they explore that as well.
Shift Happens Podcast. Shift Happens Podcast.
Awesome. Well, Chan, this has been really, really good conversation, very insightful. But before you wrap up, for the benefit of our listeners, so with your experience and seeing where this will go, what are some of the tips, like maybe one or two tips that you can share for how leaders can really maximize this time and opportunity? And as we talked about with the song, is confront this change in a great way and benefit their organization.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, right? A lot of people ask me like, "Oh, what's your tips about learning AI?" Or how can we show people? I got a simple thing. Is sometimes it's the simple things that you got to do, right? Get your hands on the tech, start using it, right? That's my first thing. A lot of people aren't using it. So that's the get your people to start using it. And whether you can actually use AI to solve some sort of a small use case, right? And show willingness to learn from your failures. You can't expect everything to be perfect on day one. You will fail and fail fast and then learn from it. And to summarize something that resonated with me, that's from our chief data scientist at the AI for Good lab at Microsoft, Joan Lavesta Perez. He has a really good book that is out. It talks about a lot of use cases for AI, not just in the domain of 365, but outside of that. What he says is understand the problem, understand the data, who your stakeholders are, and most importantly for AI, understand who your subject matter experts are, because those framing it in that way, I think, will help leaders to understand where GenAI, specifically GenAI, can add value to their business. So it's kind of that framing, being open to experiment, right, and the right mindset around that. It's people don't fear change; they fear loss. So it's to me, this is a good thing, and the tech is evolving, and you got to evolve with it.
100%. And boy, Chan, I just think about how far we've gone with technology compared to SharePoint 2007 when we started our career, right?
I know, Dax. It's amazing. I mean, I'm excited because I kind of started my career around when the internet was there, and then we've seen the cycles, and this is again it's a very very important part of history, so to speak, in a way as well from a tech point of view.
It's fascinating. I was going to ask you, do you think, Chan, since for those of us that have been around a few of these major tech milestones, you think we're entering one of the bigger ones in our lifetime?
I feel so, Mario. I mean, honestly, I kind of reflected back just recently about where I'd come from. I remember distinctly learning about how to craft a website in HTML, right? And that kind of spiraled my career, the curiosity and stuff. And I think the next generation of people and because I work in the education sector, the curiosity of learning, the curiosity of what it could mean is immense. I think, yeah, absolutely, we are at that tipping point of this is going to be something. Well, it already is. It is changing, and I think we're seeing some of the micro level changes, and then we are seeing the macro level changes that's happening. And of course, it's not without its challenges. Every technology has come and and introduced a new set of opportunities, but another new set of challenges as well. And we got to be mindful of that.
That's very well said. We have to have you back in perhaps 6 months, and we can keep track of all this progress and change.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to be back. And thank you so much, Dax and Mario, for having me. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you. And looking forward to see you again soon.
Shift Happens Podcast.
Thanks for listening. Chan gave us great examples and tips based on his experiences with organizations in Australia and New Zealand on how to get started with AI and enhance our skills and careers in a responsible and ethical way. Create a clear vision, form a working group, and foster a learning environment for AI. If you liked today's episode, subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast. Until the next time.
Shift Happens Podcast. Shift Happens Podcast.